Good morning everyone. I am Ankit and you're watching StudyIQ IS English. Today is 10th of September and we are going to discuss important news and articles from today's Indian Express newspaper. Well, the reason why I couldn't take session yesterday and day before yesterday was because a renovation work is going on in my house. I ideally wanted to go out someplace and take a visit, but I realized as I've grown older, I need to play a more important role in the household. So that is why I was busy in trying to buy all those items which will be utilized for the renovation purposes. But now I'm back, so let us deal with the important articles that have appeared in the Indian Express newspaper. We'll start off our today's discussion by understanding the process of election of the Vice President of India. Why? Yesterday, India's 15th Vice President was elected into office, so I realized that leaving this article away for today's is not a very smart thing to do, because you realize that elections to the Vice President or the office of such important constitutional post happens rarely. So it gives us an opportunity to discuss this post in detail, how the elections happen, what is the role and responsibility of the Vice President of India. So we'll cover it comprehensively, and this is important from polity part of the syllabus, therefore relevant from GS paper 2 perspective. In the second article, there was a very brilliant judgment given by Supreme Court of India on use of Aadhaar in the special intensive revision process of the electoral roll that has been going on in the state of Bihar. Now, earlier, the Election Commission of India put forward 11 required documents which did not include Aadhaar to establish the citizenship as well as identity of the voters. But the Supreme Court of India felt that this move was exclusionary in nature. So that is why Supreme Court has permitted the limited use of Aadhaar. So how will Aadhaar be used to ascertain the identity of the voters, and how or what is the purpose of Aadhaar in Indian political circumstances, that we'll understand in our today's discussion. In addition to that, we'll also try to solve two PYQs that have appeared on the use of Aadhaar. Right? So this article is very relevant from Polity and Governance, Representation of People Act. So the relevant paper here again becomes GS paper 2. In the third article, we are going to understand India's FTA with European Free Trade Association. Now, European Free Trade Association is a free trade agreement between 4 European countries, runs quite parallelly to the European Union, but it is separate from European Union. India signed an FTA last year with this grouping, and an article in the op-ed section has come in the newspaper. So we'll try to understand what is EFTA, how India has tried to more integrate with global trade, with different levels of trade integration, what are different levels of trade integration important from exams perspective, and PYQs that have appeared on this topic. We'll do everything in our today's discussion. Now, this article is important from GS paper 3 perspective, particularly the syllabus leading to external sector in the Indian economy. External sector basically deals with India's trade with different countries. In the fourth article, we are going to understand the constitutional difference between politics and constitution of India and France. And why are we discussing this article? Because currently there has been a political instability in France, which gives us an idea not just to understand the context of this development, but compare and contrast Indian constitutional scheme with France. Now, this comparison of Indian constitutional schemes with other important constitutions of the world is an important part of the syllabus in GS paper 2. So we'll cover this issue in great detail, and we'll also compare and contrast India's constitution with that of France. What are similarities and what are differences in them? In the last article, if the time permits, we are going to cover in detail about the life and contributions of Dr. Bhupen Hazarika in India's music, in India's art and culture. Now, if the time does not permit us to discuss this article today, I'll record a separate video and post it live in the channel, and I'll give you the link. Don't worry, we'll cover this anyhow today itself. So these are the 5 articles we are going to discuss. I understand many of the articles that have appeared in the newspaper, particularly in the economy page, have been left out. If need be, I'll cover them tomorrow. No need to worry. Okay, so let us start at today's discussion. Once again, if you want to download the notes, you know where to find them. This is the channel ATS Live. So the naughty students who haven't subscribed to this channel yet, go ahead and subscribe to it. I'll get the notes uploaded immediately after the session ends. How is everyone? Please do let me know. I hope every one of you is doing fine. These days, the climate and the weather changes rapidly, so you need to take care of yourself so that you don't get stuck by flu and common cold, right? Which is quite frequent in these times. Good morning, Mahamim and Benzir. Good morning, Bandana. Benzir again, both of you have logged in for different accounts today. Gaurav, Gagan, Santwana, Rishi, Jui, Reshma, Bulbul, Rishi. Good morning. Okay, CP Radhakrishnan, 17th Vice President of India. My mistake. Well, you need to understand 17th, 15th, 16th, these type of terms not important from the exam. Okay. So let us start our today's discussion with this first article of the day, which appeared on the front page and the entire 8th page of the Indian Express newspaper. We are going to discuss how the process of election to the post of Vice President of India happens in our today's discussion, and we'll also cover the relevant constitutional articles given in the Constitution. Now, this development you need to understand is important from polity perspective, hence I've written GS paper 2 here. Let us understand by knowing the context of the fight that happened, or the electoral fight that happened between these two candidates, and the result of which was Chandrapuram Ponnuswamy Radhakrishnan, or CP Radhakrishnan, popularly abbreviated as CPR, has been elected as India's 15th Vice President yesterday, defeating the opposition candidate Justice B. Sudarshan Reddy by a margin of 152 votes. Now, how much margin was the votes? Not important from your exams. This outcome became significant because it was seen as a jolt to the opposition parties. Opposition parties had earlier hoped that they were secure somewhere between 315 to 330 votes. But in reality, opposition candidate Justice Reddy got only 300 votes, and this is mainly because of the cross voting that can happen in the elections of Vice President of India. Unlike other kind of votings that happen in the floor of the House, election of Vice President of India is not subjected to the whip issued by respective political parties. And it is also given, or the voting also happens through secret ballot, so you wouldn't know which legislator have voted for which option, right? Now, in this regard, let us understand important constitutional articles given for the Vice President of India. Let us start with Article 63, which states that there shall be a Vice President of India, which means the office of Vice President of India can't be left vacant. Second article in this regard is Article 64. It states Vice President of India, in addition to be Vice President, will also discharge the responsibility of the presiding officer of the upper house of the Indian Parliament, that is Raj Sabha, which means he is an ex officio chairman of Raj Sabha. Whosoever is the Vice President of India acts also as the presiding officer of Raj Sabha. Similarly, Article 65 states that in event of occurrence of any vacancy in the office of President by reason of death of President, resignation or removal of the President, the Vice President of India for the time being acts as a President until the next President is chosen, elected and enters into office. So, in the meantime, when there will be no President of India, the roles and responsibility of President will be discharged by the Vice President of India, according to Article 65. Similarly, the Vice President of India will also discharge the function of President when the President is unable to function or discharge his roles and responsibility, maybe due to illness, absence or any other cause. So, the Constitution of India provides for Vice President of India just in case the office of President is vacant, the Vice President will be able to discharge the role and responsibility. And during the period when Vice President is acting or playing the role of President, he is eligible to get all powers and immunities that is meant for President, including emoluments, allowances and privileges. And Vice President of India in this regard, in the constitutional scheme of things, you need to understand his order of precedence is second after the President of India and above the Prime Minister of India, right? So these are the important facts that you have to remember. Article 66 of the Constitution deals with the process of election to the office of Vice President of India. It states that Vice President of India will be elected by the members of Electoral College, which consist of all the members of both houses of the Parliament, which means elected MPs plus nominated MPs, all of them vote in the election of Vice President, which is very different from the elections of President. In election of President, elected members of Lok Sabha, Raj Sabha vote. In addition to that, elected members of all the state legislative assemblies in India, they also vote. But in Vice President election, the Electoral College is somewhat narrow. It includes all the MPs, be it elected or be it nominated. And the voting process happens through proportional representation, not first past the post system. In proportional representation system, this voting happens through single transferable vote, and the process is through secret ballot, and that is why I said the process of whip is not available. Even in the case an MP cross votes, the political party can't take action against them because of the secret ballot. Now, the process of proportional representation, single transferable vote, how it works, let me tell you quite briefly. Now, the preference needs to be marked by respective MP. So, suppose there are two options. So, you go open the ballot paper and write the names in order of preferences. Suppose you're from BJP, so you'll write the name of the Vice President of India, CPR, at the first, and the opposing party member as the second, that is Justice Reddy. Even if you don't want to write the second option, it's fine. As long as you write only one option at the top, the vote would be valid. But if you don't write any name, that vote would be registered as an invalid name, right? So, the first preference is compulsory. Other preferences are somewhat optional and not mandatory in nature. But for your vote to be valid, you will have to mention at least one preferences, that too at the top. And the candidate securing majority of the votes out of all total gets to be elected as the next Vice President of India. Now, under the Constitution, the Vice President of India shall not be either a member of House of the Parliament or member of any legislature of the state. So, in this regard, the office of Vice President is very different from the presiding officer of the Lok Sabha, that is the Speaker. Now, Speaker is elected from among the members in the Lok Sabha. So, you can say Speaker is an integral part of the Lok Sabha. Same can't be said about Vice President of India. Vice President is not a member of Lok Sabha, unlike even the Deputy Chairman of the House. So, if any member of the House is elected as the Vice President of India, then that seat becomes vacant, be it any member of Parliament or member of Legislative Assembly, right? So, please understand, the Vice President of India is not a member of the House, unlike the Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha or unlike the Speaker of Lok Sabha. In addition to that, Article 66 subsection 3 deals with the eligibility criteria of who can be elected as the Vice President of India. First, he or she needs to be the citizen of India. In addition to that, they need to be over or equal to the age of 35 years of age. In addition to that, they need to be qualified to be elected as a member of Council of States, that is the Rajya Sabha. Under Article 66(4), it states that a person shall not be eligible for election of Vice President if he holds any office of profit, be it Government of India or Government of any state. So, office of profit is barred in this regard. Similarly, Article 67 lays down that the Vice President shall hold the office for a tenure of 5 years from the date on which he enters into office, but he can be re-elected n number of times. So, there is no limitation on how many times a person can serve as a Vice President of India. Now, how to remove a Vice President of India? Vice President of India can either resign from office like the previous Vice President Mr. Jagdeep Dhankar did, or they can be removed from office by a resolution passed in the Council of States, that is Rajya Sabha, by what is known as effective majority. Any idea what is effective majority? Effective majority is majority of the effective strength. Effective strength means the total membership of the House minus the vacancies. So, this is very different than simple majority. Please remember, this is called in the Constitution as all the then members of the House, which effectively means that this majority is effective majority, which is more than 50% of the effective strength of the House. And how do you calculate effective strength? That is the total number of seats minus the vacant seats. Okay. Now, what if the election of Vice President is disputed? Who will hear this matter? The matter will be heard at the apex court of the India, that is Supreme Court of India. So, it is Supreme Court who will inquire into allegation and then decide whether the election is void or not. In case if the election is declared void, then whatever decision the Vice President whose election has become void does not get illegal. So, what happens is that from the date the election becomes void, all the decisions taken by the Vice President before that date is still valid. And Parliament by law may also regulate any matters dealing with the election of President or Vice President. So, these are the important matters that you will have to remember. Okay. Now, let's see how many of you are able to solve this question. Good morning, Gaurav. Good morning, Dheeraj. Have you liked this video, all of you? Well, you don't have to worry whether he is 15th or 17th. These kind of questions will never be asked in the UPSC exam. Well, the chairman and deputy chairman of the Rajya Sabha are not the members of the House. Well, chairman is not the member, that is the Vice President of India, but deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha is elected from among the members of the House. So, he is the member of the House. First statement therefore is incorrect. While the nominated members of the two houses of the parliament have no voting rights in the presidential election, they have the right to vote in the election of vice president. This is correct. Earlier, there used to also be a nominated member in the Lok Sabha, that is members from Anglo-Indian community, but now this has been removed. So, only some total of 12 members are nominated in Rajya Sabha. Presently, there is no nominated member in Lok Sabha. Please remember that. And nominated members have no role in election of president, but they have roles in the election of president, vice president, especially the nominated members in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So, second statement is correct. And the correct answer obviously becomes option B. Yes, all of you are right. Santwana, Gaurav, Benzir, Reshma, Jui, Rishi, all of you are right. Now this question, quickly. Well, students, those who haven't liked this video, please go ahead and like it. How is Speaker of Lok Sabha removed from office? Well, the presiding officers of the House, that is in case of Rajya Sabha, the chairman of Rajya Sabha, who is the vice president, and in case of Lok Sabha, the speaker of Lok Sabha, both are removed by what the constitution says, all the then members of the House. And I've told you what the all the then members of the House means, the effective majority. An effective majority of the total members of the Lok Sabha is the right answer to this question. Okay? Arya, good morning. No problem if you're late. This question, effective majority means? Now, I hope what is effective majority, it will be clear to you all now. I hope there is no doubt. Let us move to the next article. This article appeared in the editorial section of the Indian Express today. It talks about the 12th document that has been included in the process of special intensive revision of electoral roll in the state of Bihar. And this 12th document in question is Aadhaar. How many of you have Aadhaar and how many of you have don't? Please let me know in the comments, okay? Now, the special intensive revision of electoral rolls has been going on in Bihar, and it is aimed actually to cleanse out the voter rolls before the assembly election. Now, you need to understand, in voter rolls, only the citizens of India needs to be enumerated, and only those citizens will be included in a particular voter roll who are residing in the area. So, naturally, people who have moved out of that area, their names have to be deleted from this electoral roll and needs to be included in another electoral roll in different part of the country where they are currently residing. Similarly, in case if some non-citizen of India by fraudulent means get their names in the electoral rolls, there should be an authority, which is in this case Election Commission of India, who should remove their names from the voting list. So Election Commission of India for this process originally listed 11 documents which the people can provide for their ID as well as their citizenship. Now this excluded Aadhaar, and Supreme Court of India felt that this is an exclusionary measure. So that is why after the intervention, now the 12th document, that is Aadhaar, has also been included so that people can use it to verify their identity, not their citizenship. Why? We'll understand this in our today's discussion. Now the Supreme Court's directive, that is a very important directive, and how it impacts the polity of India, let us understand this. Now the Supreme Court of India declared that Aadhaar, you can't use it for verifying the citizenship. So what you can use Aadhaar is to establish the proof of identity and residence of a particular person who wants their name to be elected in voter roll, not for their citizenship. And it is the responsibility of Election Commission of India and election registered officers, EROs, who will verify the authenticity, whether the Aadhaar is genuine or not, or whether the Aadhaar fulfills the criteria of that person being from that particular area. Similarly, Aadhaar inclusion, it corrects what the court viewed as an exclusionary approach. What is exclusionary approach? Ideally, the Election Commission of India should look to include all citizens residing in that area in the electoral roll. But when you're not giving them the adequate documents which they can furnish to establish their identity and citizenship, it provides of a very exclusionary process that rather than promoting people who are eligible to be included, you might leave out many eligible people from the electoral voting list. And that is why Election Commission needs to again issue fresh instructions to its officer to start accepting Aadhaar as a proof of identity and residence, not citizenship. Similarly, there are constitutional and legal angle using which the Supreme Court gave this direction, and now Election Commission of India has to follow this direction. First is the Representation of People Act 1950, a particular subsection, that is section 24(4), empowers the Election Commission of India to prescribe documents for helping establishing the identity of the voters. And the objective or the mandate of Election Commission of India is to ensure inclusion of citizens and exclusion of non-citizens. So there was the case where citizens who will have Aadhaar but not the other necessary 11 documents will be excluded despite being eligible from the process. Similarly, there is this Citizenship Act of 1955 which regulates the citizenship in the country, and it determines citizenship based on birth, descent, parents' legal status, and not just documents. Therefore, the Supreme Court of India, it emphasized that there is no single document apart from birth certificate or passport that helps you establish your citizenship. So the government, including the Election Commission of India, should put forward a wider list of documents that will help people establish their identity, residence and citizenship. So in that case, for identity and residence, the Aadhaar has been included, right? Similarly, the implication of this move is quite wide. First of all, it establishes and reinforces your right to vote, which stems from Article 329. Although this right to vote, stems from Article 326. Although this right to vote emerges from a constitution provision, but this is not a constitutional right. I've conducted a video where I've established this is a legal right, and a question was asked on this topic. So please remember, it is a legal right, and it is very fundamental to democratic guarantee. What does democracy means? That once in a while, whenever election happens, you get the right to vote in an election and choose the representative who will represent you in the houses, that is in parliament or in state legislature. And this makes you a citizen and separates you from a non-citizen, because non-citizens in India, they don't have a right to vote. Similarly, it strengthens the transparency and fairness of the entire process of special intensive revision of the rolls. And the Election Commission has been signaled that they need to emphasize more on inclusivity rather than excluding the eligible people from the voter rolls. And similarly, it prevents large-scale disenfranchisement of people who might be eligible to vote but don't in the absence of adequate documents, and therefore they will be provided every opportunity, including the use of Aadhaar card, to establish their identity as well as residentship. Similarly, it also maintains the balances. What you needed to do for special intensive revision, you needed to include genuine voters or genuine citizens as voters, and you need to exclude the non-citizens or people who have forged their identities to get their names included on the voting list. Similarly, there are many limits and caveats of this particular problem. First is the non-proof of citizenship. Although there is a legal requirement that only citizens can be included in the voting list, how you will establish the citizenship just because of Aadhaar? Because Aadhaar does not guarantee you the right to citizenship, right? So this needs to be balanced by the Election Commission of India. Similarly, even after Aadhaar card has been included in the list of documents, the Election Commission of India have the discretion to exclude names from the citizenship if they have the doubt. Similarly, they can also refer the doubtful cases to the Foreigner Tribunal or the Citizenship Act and Foreigner Tribunal order to the respective authorities. And Aadhaar will be only accepted subjected they are verified by the Election Commission of India and their authenticity checked. And in case of possible forgeries, there will be legal action taken against the people, right? Now, what you need to understand that for what purpose or what is Aadhaar card and for what purpose it can be used and for what purpose it can't be used. That is very important if you have to solve the previous year question. So let us quickly deal with that issue also. Now, Aadhaar is a 12-digit unique identification number which has been issued by Unique Identification Authority of India, which started as an attached office but has now gained a statutory recognition due to Aadhaar Act of 2017. So this is a statutory body now. Now this document, that is Aadhaar card, serves as a proof of identity which will be provided to you after you give your demographic details as well as your biometric details, that is your fingerprint as well as iris scan. Similarly, it has now been made mandatory for number of government services and has also been issued by private or also been used by private companies for identification process. But you need to understand the use by private companies is not mandatory in nature, whereas the use for government schemes in many cases have made it mandatory. Why is it mandatory? We'll understand, no need to worry. Now, what Aadhaar can do? It can actually help you prove your identity and residence. It also is able to, government is able to authenticate the entries under Aadhaar Act 2016. It can be used for verifying entries in government databases, including voter rolls. Similarly, if you are a poor person and you want to access welfare services of the government, you can access using or by linking your bank accounts with Aadhaar. For example, government gave a direction that your PAN card needs to be linked with Aadhaar card so that people who have multiple accounts and have black money, they can be identified by the government. Similarly, many subsidies that is provided by direct benefit transfers, how are they provided? By linking your bank account with your Aadhaar and your mobile number. That is called as Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile, or JAM Trinity. So in these cases where the money is coming from the Consolidated Fund of India, all those cases or all those beneficiaries, they can or it is mandatory for them to link their Aadhaar card with their mobile phones. Similarly, in the Justice Puttaswamy argument, which dealt with right to privacy, it upheld this direction because this is a logical thing to do. But what is more evident or what is more important, that for what purpose you can't use your Aadhaar? First of all, it does not guarantee you the right to citizenship. Citizenship in India is determined by Citizenship Amendment Act of 1955 and its subsequent amendments. Therefore, just by having an Aadhaar, you can't say that I am a citizen of India. Aadhaar card is also issued to residents of India who are also not the citizens of India. Similarly, it does not provide a conclusive evidence. Like most identity proofs, it can also be forged. So when you're providing Aadhaar, it does not give you the right to get services from the government. Government is well within the right to ascertain whether the Aadhaar you have provided is genuine or not. Similarly, it cannot override privacy safeguards. Because of Aadhaar Act, government wanted to include many other authentication purposes to be linked with Aadhaar, including you getting a SIM card, you getting many private benefits like bank accounts, etc. But in the Justice Puttaswamy case, the Supreme Court invalidated the overuse of Aadhaar. It stated that it is very essential for the government to maintain a balance between individuals' right to privacy and individuals' right to get benefits from the government. So in that case, if the money is coming from Consolidated Fund of India, it is mandatory on you to provide your Aadhaar. But when you have to get yourself, say, a bank account opened, or you have to get yourself a SIM card, you can also provide other identity cards, not necessarily Aadhaar card. So therefore, it can't override privacy safeguard, and wherever Aadhaar needs to be used, it needs to be fulfilling two tests, that is the necessity as well as proportionality. Only if their necessity and proportionality is fulfilled, then only you can mandate the use of Aadhaar, except that no. right? Now let's see how many of you are able to solve this question. Where salary vice president को मिलता है, that I guess is about 3.5 to 4 lakh rupees a month. Not important for your exam, don't worry. Rashi, I will take class from today onwards every day, okay? No need to worry. Well, this obviously is incorrect. Second one is obviously incorrect. If you get an Aadhaar, that does not mean your name is with UAIDI for perpetuity. If you want, you can also get your Aadhaar card deactivated and your details deleted in the government servers. So both of these statements are incorrect, and therefore neither 1 nor 2 is the right answer, option D. Now solve this question. बेंजीर और मामी आज अलग अलग सेशंस देख रही हैं दोनों, क्या बात है, बहुत डेटा आ गया है दोनों के पास. मेरे लिए तो अच्छा है, ज्यादा व्यूज आ रहे हैं. हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू हैवंट लाइक्ड द वीडियो? प्लीज लाइक इट एज फार एज क्विकली एज पॉसिबल, ओके? Answer to this question quickly. Well, Aadhaar metadata cannot be stored for more than 3 months. This is incorrect because it can be stored for as much as 6 months. You know what is a metadata? Now suppose if government verifies that you are a Aadhaar holder and if they take your thumbprint, right? So this data that the server has authenticated your details, this can be stored for at max as 6 months. After that, it has to be deleted. Second statement, the state cannot enter into any contract with private corporation for sharing of Aadhaar data. This obviously is correct. You know why? Why this is correct? Because this fulfills the right to privacy. Because it is a very private data that the state has taken from you, and state obviously can't share this data with any private organization. This can share the data with government organization, but only on a use case basis, not in blanket terms. So in case of private corporation, it is prohibited, and therefore second statement is right. It is mandatory for obtaining insurance products, incorrect. For use of insurance products, for use of SIM cards, for use of bank accounts, this is voluntary in nature. You can or you cannot, it is not mandatory. Aadhaar is mandatory for getting benefits funded out of the Consolidated Fund of India. This is correct, and this was actually validated by the Supreme Court of India in the Justice Puttaswamy case. So, fourth and second is right. First and third is incorrect, and you have to identify the correct statement. So, option B is your right answer. Yes, Santwana, correct. Yes, Rishi, correct. मामीम अब तो करेक्ट हो गई. Now students who want to take admission for the any courses on StudyIQ, I have one thing that I wanted to tell you, and please hear what I am trying to say. Now, I understand whenever you have to take an admission, there is a habit of procrastination in human. We delay it just because we have to spend money. देख लेंगे होता रहता है. But please understand the rates of all the courses will rise from 12th of September. That is by the end of this week. So if you have to take admission in any of the courses, UPSC, State PCS, optional, judiciary, please feel free to do so, but be very quick. Before the end of the week, you have to take admission, but otherwise the prices will rise. And you know the drill. If you have to get the maximum discounts on the platform, you need to use the code ATS Live. On all the courses, you'll get the maximum discount. But please hurry up because the rates which has been provided now will increase after 12th of September. Now moving to this next article, usually whenever a politician writes an article, I don't cover it in the news for obvious reasons. But this article, although written by a former union minister and a former member of parliament, is important from economy perspective. So I've taken what is necessary from this article and presented you everything that you need to know from your exams perspective. Let us deal with this article. It talks about the global stage and India's trade integration with other blocs, particularly the European Free Trade Association EFTA. Now, in recent signing of Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement, this is basically a form of free trade agreement that India signed with the European Free Trade Association. Now, European Free Trade Association comprises of 4 countries, Switzerland, Norway, Iceland and Liechtenstein. I've abbreviated them as LINS, right? And it is seen as a landmark. Why? This is India's first comprehensive trade agreement with a group of developed European countries. Now, in Europe, there are 2 prominent trade blocs. First is European Union, which consists of more than 20 members, and the second is European Free Trade Association, which consists of 4 members, as I've told you. Now, India is in a process of getting more integrated with global trade. That is, India wants to sign free trade agreement with its major trade partners. But free trade agreement is not the only form of trade integration. It also includes preferential trade agreement, customs union, comprehensive economic partnership agreement, comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, customs union, common market, trade union. What are these? Let us understand this in our today's discussion. First, let me tell you what is EFTA. EFTA consists of 4 countries. I've told you the abbreviation is LINS. And this was established in 1960 through a convention known as Stockholm Convention. This is not the Environment Wala Convention. Please remember, this is a separate one. Similarly, the aim of this free trade association was to promote free trade and economic integration among its members, like all the free trade agreements. But you need to understand there can be a bilateral free trade agreement like the India has signed with, say, UAE, or India has signed with UK, right? Similarly, when free trade agreement includes more than 1 country, those are known as multilateral trade agreements. For example, there was recently in news known as RCEP. Similarly, there is another kind of trade integration which we will know, South African Customs Union. European Union is an example of another trade integration, right? So these are different degrees of trade integration. How they differ, I will let you know, no need to worry. Now, the main objectives of setting up EFTA was to maintain and develop the EFTA convention, which governs how the economic relationship between these 4 countries go. Similarly, it manages European Economic Area Agreement, which integrates EFTA with that of EU and other 3 EFTA states, that is Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway, into a single market. So what is single market? I will tell you, no need to worry. Similarly, it also helps expand EFTA's global network of signing free trade agreements with various countries, and therefore India's free trade agreement with EFTA is a part of this initiative. Now, you may have seen there are many terms that I have used: single market, free trade agreement, common market. What are those terms? We'll tell you. Now, EFTA operates alongside the European Union, so it is not a part of European Union, rather a parallel arrangement with European Union. Now, the members of EFTA, they are a part of European single market and Schengen area, but not a part of European Union's customs union. So, what is customs union? What is single market? We'll find out. Any idea what is Schengen area? Schengen area basically is an area entering which a foreign citizen only needs 1 kind of a visa. So, all the countries who are part of Schengen area, you can enter them just having 1 Schengen visa. You don't need visas for different countries. And there's a very good reason for it. These countries are very small countries. So, technically, you can move from, say, Belgium to Netherlands and come back in a span of hours, which you can't think of in a wide country like US or India, right? So, as the countries are smaller, they are closely interrelated as far as economy is concerned, as far as their culture is concerned. So, the migration between these 2 countries for the local citizens, for foreign citizens, are made easy through an arrangement called as Schengen area. Okay, so you can move from 1 country to another in Schengen, just similar to how you can move from 1 state to another in India, right? Now, I was telling you about the differences in single market, customs union, free trade agreement, or European Union or preferential trade agreement. What are these? Let us understand this. Now, at the bottommost part is what is called as a preferential trade agreement. Now, when two countries or more than two countries enter into an agreement to reduce the customs duty on handful of goods and services, only a handful of goods and services, that is called as preferential trade agreement. And the list that is included in the preferential trade agreement is called as positive list. So it means whichever goods and services are mentioned in the positive list, the customs duty on those goods will be reduced under the preferential trade agreement. So this is a very basic form of trade integration. Higher to the preferential trade agreement comes free trade agreement. In free trade agreement, two countries or more than two countries who are signing an FTA, they agree to reduce customs duty on most of the goods and services that are traded between those two countries. And these goods and services are included in a list known as negative list. So whatever goods and services will be mentioned in negative list, except those goods and services, the rates of customs duty on all those goods will be reduced. So only those items which are included in negative list, only those items the customs duty won't be reduced, except all the other items will be reduced. India and US are in discussion of signing a free trade agreement. That is why Donald Trump is creating pressure. More than free trade agreement or a level above free trade agreement is known as comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, comprehensive economic partnership agreement, and there are many handful of names that have arisen. The difference between free trade agreement and comprehensive economic partnership agreement is the degree of integration. Free trade agreement only dealt with goods and services, right? And comprehensive economic and partnership agreement deals with trade in goods and services, deals with investment, deals with access of social security benefits, deals with matters relating to intellectual property rights. So you can understand comprehensive economic cooperation agreement or CEPA are a deal above FTA. It includes not just goods and services but IPR, movement of personnel, intellectual property rights, etc. Above that is customs union. Now what is customs union? When countries decide together, they sit together, they would reduce the goods and services or the customs duty on goods and services. But after that, commonly they will impose a similar customs duty on products which are arising out of the other countries who are not a part of customs union. The most common example is the South African Customs Union. In South African Customs Union, the members have zero to very little amount of customs duty import on goods and services of each and other countries. But countries outside of that customs union, they can single-handedly and in togetherness impose customs duty. So for example, if India decides to trade with SACO, they will impose a common customs duty on all the products that is entering into the respective members from India, right? Above that is common market. Now the difference between customs union and common market is that they are involved in customs union, but they also deal with free movement of capital as well as labor. And the best form of trade integration is known as economic union. The most glaring example is the European Union. Now the members of economic union, they also regulate their fiscal policy as well as monetary policy together. And that is why you will realize that the countries who are part of European Union, their monetary policy is regulated by European Central Bank, that is ECB. So this is the degree of integration. The highest degree of integration includes economic union. So these countries not just deal with trade togetherly, but they also manage the money supply in their economy through one single central bank. Below that comes common market, which is a sum of customs union, and it includes free movement of capital and labor. Customs union, I have already told you, here the member countries, they impose zero or very little customs duty on the goods coming from their member countries, but when coming from outside the membership or the union, they impose a single-handedly or a similar customs duty. Then comes CECA CEPA, which includes FTA in goods and services and also includes investment, social security benefits, their totalization as well as intellectual property rights. And free trade agreement includes reduction in customs duty on almost most of the goods and services which are traded between the members, except few goods which are included in the negative list. And the least amount of trade integration happens in preferential trade agreement, in which only a handful of goods on which the customs duty are reduced, and these goods are mentioned in positive list. Okay. Now let's see how many of you are able to solve this question. Now, India was a part of negotiation when it comes to RCEP, but one day before signing RCEP, India went back on its word and decided not to sign RCEP. You know why? RCEP included members of ASEAN country and 6 other countries, which also included the country of concern, that was China. So, India did not wanted to enter into a free trade agreement with a group of countries which included China, and that is why option B is your right answer. Yes. Santwana, Arya, Rishi, Mamim, Jui, Reshma, Gaurav, all correct. Rupa also correct. Now, Dheeraj, you'll have to get back on the question. Option B is correct. No need to delete it. I've seen your comment. Now, another question. If someone marks the question incorrectly, no need to be afraid. If you mark it incorrectly and if you remember why you marked it incorrectly, then only you'll mark it rightly in the exam, right? So this is why. You shouldn't feel ashamed if you have marked a question incorrectly. Now, India has been involved in negotiating a free trade agreement with European Union since the year 2006. So it has been close to 19 years when India wants to sign a broad-based trade and investment agreement with European Union, which is basically a kind of foreign trade agreement. And even 19 years of discussion, multiple rounds of negotiation, India still hasn't been able to finalize an FTA with European Union. Now this question, it's European Union. I told you the abbreviation is LINS, Liechtenstein, Iceland, Norway and Switzerland, not Sweden. So that is why I gave this option to throw you off. Rest all are correct. Only 3, option C is right. Yes, Switzerland, not Sweden. Now this question. UAE, Australia is also somewhat recent. US, we are still negotiating. And with Singapore, we have signed Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, which is a more than free trade agreement. So this is also right. So India, except US, has kind of trade agreements with all these 4 countries. So option C again is right, only 4. Not USA, right? Now let us move to this article. This talks about political instability in France. So what I'll do, I'll give you the context, I'll give you the reason why political instability is happening in France. But what is more important from your exam is what is the constitutional comparison between these 2 countries, because this has been asked in the exam, right? So let us start with our today's discussion. The outgoing French PM, François Bayrou, resigned after losing a confidence vote in the Parliament of France. Now, he was fourth PM to be appointed on the presidency of Emmanuel Macron in the last 2 years. Now, the trigger of his outset was a controversial proposal for making 44 billion euro budget cuts among the rising public debt in the country of France. So why is this so touchy topic? What are the proper political parties in France and what are their outlook towards this issue? I'll tell you, and after that we'll move to the constitutional scheme. Okay. Now, in June 2024, last year, the France went into election again after Emmanuel Macron's party lost heavily in the European Parliament election. So to get public behind his image, he decided to hold a snap election. But the result of this snap election was that the Macron centrist coalition got lesser amount of seats than it had before. And as a result, Left Alliance got most amount of seats, but they were not having the adequate majority. Whereas the primary rival of Emmanuel Macron, Marine Le Pen, her far-right national rally got most votes but did not command the majority amount of seats in the parliament. So in that regard, let us understand what the parties of left and the what parties of right feel. Now, parties of left, they generally have a very pro-state outlook. Pro-state outlook as far as economy is concerned. So, parties on the left want higher participation of the state as far as economy is concerned, and these parties are called as communist parties, socialist parties, etc. Similarly, these parties are also very pro-welfare. That is, they want higher spending by the government as far as welfare obligation is concerned. On the other hand, parties on the right, they want a free market economy, and in free market economy, you understand, they want very less amount of state. So you can say they have a negative outlook as far as state and its regulation is concerned. Similarly, they prefer very less spending on welfare, because otherwise they also want less amount of taxes to be imposed. And whenever a government has to impose higher amount of spending as far as welfare is concerned, so naturally you will understand, under leftist regime, the amount of taxes that is collected is also increased. So this is basically two sides of the argument in the politics is concerned, be it India or be it any other country. Now, Emmanuel Macron has a more centrist approach. In centrist approach, you will understand a party would do whatever is best for the country, irregardless of the rigid ideology that is followed by left or the right. Now, the majority or the primary rival of Emmanuel Macron is Marine Le Pen, whose party is called as far right party, which has a very extreme outlook as far as rightist ideology is concerned, which means these parties are very anti-immigrant, they are very anti-welfare. So you need to understand, any government at the center, if it increases welfare spending, it has to increase more amount of taxes, which will be very politically unpopular. Similarly, if it decreases spending on welfare to rein in the debt, then it would also encourage a main allegation of corruptions by the leftist party. Similarly, who is the most important rival of the president of France? That is an anti-welfare and anti-immigrant party. So in order to check the rise of far right, the centrist party is trying to fulfill this anti-immigrant as well as anti-welfare policies, and the other measure is to reduce the amount of public debt in France. Understood? Any doubt in this slide? Any doubt in this? Now, what was the trigger of political instability in France? First is the frequent ousting of the PM. Now, many PM, whenever they have come to power, they have difficulty in passing their budgets. And the reason is, most of the governments, they want to reduce public debt and obviously want to reduce the overall spending by the government. And that is why it is a very politically suicidal look, and that is why the government has not been able to pass the budgets. Dheeraj, India and Singapore has comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, which is more than free trade agreement. It is a part of free trade agreement, but more than free trade agreement, as I've already told you. Now, why is France wanting to reduce the debt? The reason is, France has a lot of debt which amounts to 114% of GDP. Any idea how much government of India debt is total. India's government of India's debt in total was 57.1% at the end of financial year 2025, and by the end of next financial year, that is by 2026, the government has projected to reduce its overall debt to 56.1%. Now compare this India's debt with that of France, which is more than double. Now this is equivalent to 50,000 euros per citizen, and in Eurozone it is third highest after Greece and Italy. Now, there are many structural issues that are plaguing the France's polity. First is the aging population. Now, what happens when your population is aging? There would be less amount of people who would be in working age. So, the overall tax collection of the government would reduce. And as people increase in the aging age, so as the amount of welfare spending that the government is obligated to. So, first it leads to less amount of taxpayers, less in the tax collection of the government. Similarly, rising pension burden means the overall expenditure of the government increases. So, when overall expenditure increases, overall revenue collection of the government increases, it reduces the amount of borrowings by the government to meet its deficit, and that is why it contributes to rising amount of debt. Therefore, high social spending on welfare and pension, it is a very political sensitive topic. So, wherever government is trying to reduce the political spending, reduce the amount of welfare spending, this is seen as a political suicide and very unpopular in the politics of France, and that is why frequently the prime ministers have no other option but to resign in France. So this was the debt crisis and its overall summary. Now, from our exams perspective, what becomes more important is the similarity between Indian and French constitution. First is the core ideals based on which both of the constitutions are framed. If you look at the Indian constitution's preamble, you will see the ideals of the Indian constitutional preamble follows values of equality, liberty as well as fraternity, which again has been inspired from French Revolution. Similarly, both of these countries have granted universal adult franchisee citizens. For example, in India, anyone over and above of 18 years of age is eligible to vote except for few people who are disqualified by law. We have understood what is disqualification. Similarly, both of them have a bicameral parliament. Bicameral parliament, that is a parliament which includes a house which is popularly elected and a house which represents the interest of state. For example, France, it has a National Assembly which is the lower house, and it consists of members who are directly elected by the people based on direct universal suffrage for 5-year terms. Similarly, there is a Senate, that is upper house, which is indirectly elected. It is renewed half every 3 years. What is the renewal process of India's Rajya Sabha? That is 1/3 of members, they retire every 2 years. So, India, it has a very similar bicameral structure of its assemblies in form of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, that is the lower house and upper house respectively. Similarly, both of these constitutions have emergency situation for declaring emergencies. In India, we have already covered, we have 3 types of emergencies: national emergency, state emergency, which is also called as presidential rule, and financial emergency. Now, what are the differences between these two constitutions? This is more important. First is the structure of the government. Now, India follows a federal structure of the government which has more federal features than unitary features, whereas France is a unitary state which is organized on a decentralized basis. Although the government would be close to people, but all of them, they get the powers from unitary government in France, as opposed to India, where different levels of the government get their powers not from each other but from the supreme law of the land, that is constitution. Similarly, the form of government is very different. India prescribes to Westminster form of government, which is a parliamentary system. Here, there would be a president who would act as a ceremonial head, whereas the government's head would be the Prime Minister of India, who has real powers. Whereas in France, it follows very similar to Sri Lanka, a semi-presidential system of government, where the president who is directly elected holds substantial power, whereas the Prime Minister of India, who will be elected directly but gets its power from the president, is in charge of day-to-day affairs. So that is why France has a semi-presidential form of government as opposed to India's parliamentary system of government. Now you understand, France has a semi-presidential system of the government, so powers of French president is higher as compared to Indian president. India's president is elected indirectly for a 5-year tenure without any cap on the number of terms, whereas France president, who has more power, is elected directly on a basis of universal adult franchise, and he serves on a tenure of 5 years and can be renewed only once. So at max, a president in France can serve for 2 terms, whereas there is no such limit for Indian president. Similarly, the most important differences between these two countries is the value of secularism. Now, this question has been asked in the UPSC mains before. Now, on one hand, India follows what is known as positive type of secularism. This secularism enlists or wants to have an equal respect for all the religions. But at the same time, this model is also called as a principal distance model, in which the state can intervene in any religion based on matters to fulfill the needs of constitutional obligations. Whereas France follows what is known as negative form of secularism or an extreme form of secularism. It means a radical separation between church and state, which means the French government in any case can't intervene in matters relating to religion, and this is more of a rigid approach of the government, right? So this is the most important difference between the two, that is the value of secularism. Again, India follows positive value of secularism, France follows a negative value of secularism. Now, referendum. Referendum is an instrument of direct democracy where people can vote for a matters relating to government if government actually puts certain matters to vote. For example, a referendum was held in in UK whether to be a part of European Union or to leave, known as Brexit. Now, this is an instrument of direct democracy which is not mentioned anywhere in the Indian Constitution. But process of referendum or instruments of direct democracy, they are directly or explicitly mentioned in the French Constitution. So this is another difference. The last and the most important difference is the justice system of these two countries. India follows an integrated judicial system where there are hierarchy of courts. So suppose you get a decision from lower court, so you can challenge the decision to a higher court. France has a more divided judicial system. Here, legal jurisdictions are handled differently between individuals, whereas administrative jurisdictions, that is disputes between public authorities and citizens, they are handled differently. So, France has a very divided form of judiciary. India has a very integrated form of judiciary where there are hierarchy of courts, Supreme Court at the top, followed by high courts, followed by district courts and subordinate courts. Okay. Now, let's see how many of you are able to solve this question. Hello Nayak, Rashmi Nayak, hello. Thank you Arvind. धीरज, तुम पढ़ते कम हो, कंफ्यूज ज्यादा होते हो, है ना? This is correct. मतलब incorrect of the, which is not the feature of Indian Constitution. India is not an agreement among federating units, unlike the United States. Okay. This question now. Article 50, part of DPSP. This question: what was the exact constitutional status of India as on January 26th, 1950? This was after 42nd Amendment Act in 1976. So option B is the right answer. Sovereign Democratic Republic. Separation of powers. You don't want each and every power of the state to be given to a single authority. You need the power to be divided. So that is why for passing the laws, the power is given to legislature. For enacting the laws, the power is given to executive, and to implement the constitutional provisions and to deal with disputes, you have a judiciary. So that is why separation of power is necessary. Option D is right. Now there is this last article. The time is already above 12:05, so I'll record this video and get it uploaded on the channel. No need to worry. And the notes you can download it from the Telegram channel known as ATS Live. Okay. So we'll see each other again tomorrow at 11. Please have a very good day. This is all from my side. Have a very good day.